we'll choose the ZWave option, and as you can see, it's loading up a file. The file that is loaded up is the one that is highlighted in Scout. In this case, I had the left lens highlighted. You can see at this point on the screen that we're working with the left lens. The percentage number shown next to the designation of right and left is telling us how much of the data was used. In this case, 87%. Typically, you'll never see 100%. You'll see high 80s, low 90s as the amount of data used, because some of the data is discarded as being erroneous. Once Wave has loaded up the file, it will begin analyzing it and design a default lens. It brings in the refractive error information that was entered in the Scout database, but many times that information is either not entered or it may be different for this particular case. So after the back surface of the lens, the fit, is designed for the standard lens, you'll be presented with the refractive error entry data screen, which you'll see here, the spectacle plane refractive error, and that means exactly what it says. What you get in your refractor as the patient sits behind the photometer. In this case, we'll accept the -175, -50, and click Continue. And that will give us our basic lens power. If you are using a monitor that does not show the fluorescein pattern very well, you can increase the brightness of the fluorescein pattern using this little toggle. It will always default to the original settings, so if your monitor doesn't show very well, every time you'll have to increase the brightness just a bit. That doesn't mean there's more fluorescein there, it just means that your monitor is made a little brighter so that you can see the fluorescein a little more distinctly. There are several ways to look at the contact lens design within ZWave. We access those by clicking this drop-down box, and as you can see, we can look at a fluorescein simulation. We can look at the curvature map of the back surface of the contact lens, and that's going to appear like this in this case. And as you can see, this is very similar to the topography beneath the lens. Or we can look at the axial curve of this, which is much simpler, as is always the case when we compare axial maps to curvature maps. We can also look at the front curvature of the lens. This is the front surface of the lens. And as you can see, there's an area centrally, which is the anterior optic zone. There's a junction, and then the periphery has some texture to it to help keep the lens oriented on the eye. We can also look at the axial map of the front surface of the lens, and again, it's quite simple. We can look at the way ZWave has interpreted this cornea. As you can see, a lot of these irregularities have been filtered out with the ZWave program, so they won't throw us off too much. ZWave gives us an estimate of the average curvature in the central 3 millimeters, and that's shown as the K reading here on the screen. This is telling us not the flat or steep curvature, but the average curvature in the center of the eye. It also gives us an estimate of the astigmatism on that cornea in the central 3 millimeters, and in this case it's about 3/4 of a diopter, roughly with the rule. If we go back and look at the fluorescein pattern, we can see from the graph up above that we have a 10.7 millimeter overall diameter. Now that overall diameter comes from the K reading. It's based on the K reading. The steeper the K reading, the smaller the overall diameter. The flatter the K reading, the larger the overall diameter. Within this graph, we see a green baseline. The green baseline represents the cornea. Now what we're looking at is one particular semi-meridian from the apex to the edge of the lens. And as we look at this fluorescein pattern, in this case we're at the 3 o'clock semi-meridian, and this is the apex here where you see fluorescein, and the lens comes down and touches, and you have some bearing at this point, which you see is black on the fluorescein pattern, and then the lens lifts back up for some edge clearance at the edge of the lens. So we can tell what this tear layer clearance is in this semi-meridian. If we want to look at a different meridian, let's say the vertical meridian, we can see that we have some tear layer clearance all the way from the center to the edge of the lens in the vertical meridian. Now this is basically the default lens design, where we have some bearing at 3 and at 9 o'clock, as you can see, and we have clearance from the apex clear to the edge in both the superior and inferior aspects of this lens. This is to allow tear exchange.